bio still says candidate ID CEO of. So you might want to update that at some point after this show, because if you've noticed, when new people register for this, everyone is now like forced to put their first name, second name in, and I think they're just trying to encourage like true identities on the platform. It's branding, isn't it? Like people hover over your name, and you can actually see what people do. So yeah. Anyway, folks, just as everyone's here, just want to let you know that I like the way that Crowdcast is kind of forcing people to put their first and second name in when they register. It kind of then makes sense. It helps me identify who it is, by the way, so I can pull people on screen properly. But also it kind of makes sense for you to kind of use it as a bit of marketing, because there's a bit of, if you hover over anybody's image, a little modal comes up and you can put some messaging in there. So if you want to, direct yourself to a website, or, you're looking for work, for instance, put your LinkedIn there, or you just want to connect or whatever, might be useful to try that. So
just updated mine.
Did you really? Let's have a look at a quick hover. You're still CEO of candidate ID on mine, but maybe I've got to refresh the screen or something. Perhaps I've got refresh, but don't worry. All right, listen, let's crack on through. We are, welcome everybody. It's episode 221 of Brainfood Live On Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail, never fails. We're always here. I'm delighted to see you all with us today. I just wanted to run through a few things. Obviously, we're talking, I hope you got my message actually, in which case, do confirm you can hear me okay. So just checking in on audio, visual. If you can hear or see me on Crowdcast, let me know in the comments. We should be live streaming this everywhere. I hope and pray this is now out on LinkedIn. Let me quickly check my phone, because I'm literally got no two screens. I've got to use my phone to do it. If you are on LinkedIn, let me know you can hear or see me okay. Yes, I'm going live. And by the way, we've got a record number of people live streaming this show, including you, Adam Gordon, Rob Walker, as usual. Rob's always there. We've got Juliana Park as well, all the way from Brazil, blasting it out to the Brazilian massive. So we've got loads of people doing it. And Virginia Tirado, who's coming on to the show later on, she's doing it as well. So, folks, this is a new innovation, but if you want to basically live stream this show, or indeed anybody else's show, you can do so on LinkedIn. And it just drags more people to your page views. Why not? Get your extra traffic. Help spread some good conversation around. So there we go. All right, I think people can hear me okay, which is fine. Gavin's complaining about the audio. I hope that's okay, bro. I mean, let me know what 8-bitish means. Maybe it's just quality's average. I don't know. Anyway, we've got to crack on, because there's not much more we can do about it here. Welcome everybody to the show. Today we're going to be talking about career progression tips for TA leaders. So if you're a TA leader or want to be a TA leader, this is going to be a great show for you. We've actually got a bit of a special change of format, because Anais Neumann is going to come on and actually do a presentation. I'm going to run through that real quick, but I saw this presentation when I was in Berlin a month or so ago. It's fantastic. And I thought, you know what? Not only do we want to bring Anais on, but why don't we just show some of the audience some of the good stuff that she put together as well. And then we use that as a discussion point and bring on people like Joe Phillips, who's a recruitment coach, and also Virginia Tirado on as well. We're going to have a great conversation about it. So if this is the topic you're interested in, you're in the right place. Okay, before we keep on going, we need to thank our sponsors. As ever, we can't do this show without our sponsors. And as ever, Brainfood Live is sponsored by some of the great companies that contribute so much to our business. Today, we are sponsored by a company called Symphony Talent. Symphony Talent. I think a lot of people might know these guys, but probably not as well as you might think, or you should. They're basically a full service recruitment, marketing, talent acquisition, top of the funnel type of business, bringing in technology, consultancy, advice, all kinds of campaign management and support. They're the sort of business that you need to go to if you don't have, or you're not happy with your top of funnel activity, or you're not happy with your brand positioning in terms of an employer. have a checkout of Symphony Talent. They are a company that's sitting in this space, helping corporate businesses do that part of the recruitment funnel a lot better. Symphonytalent.com, that's where it is. I'll just share that on the chat screen right there. Okay, cool. Let's get on with the show. Adam, good to see you as usual. Thanks for being patient, just sitting there. I wonder whether we should bring you in a bit later after I do my spiel, because, you know, you got 5 minutes of kind of just like, you know, looking dumb and pretty on the screen, don't you, Adam? That's basically the role for the first 5 minutes.
Yes, I could be doing something a lot more productive.
That's
in that 5 minutes.
I was gonna say, imagine if you're on the phone and making calls or something. That'd be quite funny. Anyway, no worries. Yeah, Bob, you can't do it after you start. You have to do it in advance, I'm afraid to say. I probably need to email it out to the people. But useful experiment. And by the way, think about how it could be used for employer branding. Because imagine if you're, I don't know, doing a hiring manager intake and you recorded that and live streamed it, you could get a lot of people out blasting now as a de facto advert. Anyway, Adam, let's review the newsletter real quick. Did you watch it last week? Did you read it last week? And if so, what was interesting then?
Yeah, I did. So let's talk about connected data. Polynode. Yeah, Polynode is a company that analyzes social media and is able to visualize for you what networks look like. And the blog that I enjoyed from Brainfood was about visualizing the HR tech landscape. And effectively, it uses the people also viewed function within LinkedIn to build out a map of here's all the companies, here's how to categorize them, here's how they overlap with each other, and here's where they are in the world. And I mean, it's fascinating to look at one of these polynodes, and you know, because it's the world, and you can see where everything's going and how it all links, and the possibilities for that. And in fact, I saw something similar to this like 10 years ago. I don't think it was Polynode, but I saw something similar to this where somebody had mapped out like the link between personal connections using LinkedIn connections. And I'm surprised that we haven't seen it become more mainstream within recruiting yet. Oh, I certainly haven't. I don't know. Maybe like Toby Culshaw and his kind of posse have, but there's endless possibilities with this.
Do you know why it doesn't happen more often? In fact, that's a rhetorical question, because I do know why. It's basically because the platform that has the data typically cuts off the visualizing services like that. I used to work for a company that did this, Peer Index, back in the day, which tried to track one of the very early kind of influence graph type of businesses, try to figure out who's influential online. And we were very dependent on Twitter. Twitter cut off the API. It was like, okay, that's it. It's all over. So it's one of those where it's dependent. I mean, these guys basically would depend on LinkedIn being cool with them tracking that data, but at some point, they're going to block that off. But anyway, whilst it's still there, it's a really interesting way to actually get a map of the landscape. Because one thing that's always annoyed me about when people put together HR tech landscape maps and all this, it's like the map itself is just a load of logos on a grid. And it makes no sense whatsoever. You don't know who's big or not. You don't know what the relationships are between any of these businesses. There's no idea as to what the network looks like. But Polynode were able to put together what looked like a map. It's a network graph, and it could actually track the strength of relationships between, let's say, the founders of businesses, because they'd be more obviously connected via LinkedIn. And they're the ones that pop up on whatever. So you imagine a situation where, let's say, PayPal Mafia, very famously, they go off and set off loads of companies. Something like Polynode will be able to map that out for you and then be able to think, you know what, I should sit in this area if I want to do business with that group of companies. Very, very interesting.
Who's your favorite PayPal Mafia?
They're all controversial, aren't they? And they're all kind of towards the right side of politics. So
Peter Thiel.
They're all Thiel. I've got no time for. I think he's well out there. I think overall it's probably someone like David Sachs, but that's because I listen to the All In podcast and I think he's got some decent chat on that. Reid Hoffman, obviously, on LinkedIn. Elon Musk, you know, you've got all these types of folks in there. So yeah, it's all of the people that a lot of individuals. They're definitely not the PC or definitely not the woke sort of mafia by any means.
They're not treading on eggshells when they speak, that group, are they?
Not at all, not at all. Which is part of the reason why they're popular. You know, the truth be told is I think we do a little bit of too much of treading on eggshells. Anyway, give us one more, couple more. Actually.
Right. So another one. Okay. Hiring managers lie. 40%. It said 40% of hiring managers lie. Then I think in the article it actually is 36%. They lie. Hiring managers lie to candidates. If you add in how much they lie about themselves and other things, it's probably 100%. But anyway, that's really cynical about humans, isn't it? But anyway, they lie to candidates about, I think, lots of different things. The top one was really what's involved in the role. But there was all sorts of other things like what it's like to work for the company. The second one actually was the career progression opportunity, which is not as high as maybe they make out it is. They lie in the interview. They lie in the job descriptions they write. They lie in the offer letter even. And a lot of them have said they've actually had to lie to get the candidate to accept the job.
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, obviously lying is bad, like morally bad, of course, but how much is omitting like something that is true also a form of lying? And recruiters, I'm sorry, we routinely do that. You know, we might know, for instance, the reason why this job is vacant is because actually there was some sort of scandal in whatever, but we don't often lead with that. We, you know, hey, it's a great job, it's got blah, blah, blah. You know, if someone broaches to it, we might step up and say it, but we don't lead with it. So I think how much of recruitment is in fact, you know, just presenting just the best sides, and when does that segue from being good sales to being dishonest? And I don't think that line is particularly clear. I'd be surprised if anybody in the audience right now can say, you know what, literally I took every single thing was absolutely true that's ever come out of your mouth in a recruitment call. I don't think that's the case. You know, you go to your hiring manager and say, yeah, I can definitely deliver that. Half the time you're thinking no chance, right? So there's a lot of less honest conversation that occurs in our business, probably in other businesses as well. But this research, I don't know whether it's helpful or not, but it kind of just starts a conversation, doesn't it? 4 in 10 hiring managers lie to candidates.
If you think about like the lies that they tell unwittingly, so oh yes, the company is absolutely stable, when the CEO and the CFO are like telling everybody, yeah, the company's stable, when in actual fact, there's like 1 month's worth of runway left in the bank. The hiring manager doesn't necessarily know that, but they've still got to get the jobs filled. So there's probably a lot of things.
That's not lying.
It's not lying, but it's corporate lying, because it's the company. The company is definitely, you know, being dishonest.
There's a classic example. We don't have access to the board meeting as an employee. Yeah. You have no clue. How many times does the boss email comes out, guys, sorry, we can't do payroll this week. You know, that's shocking. Like, obviously they knew in advance, but they don't tell us. Is that a lie by omission? Probably. So yeah, I mean, I think there's limitations to how honest we can possibly be in business. And that's just an indictment of how the system works. So yeah, anyway,
unrest, civil unrest, Resolution Foundation, which I think is a think tank, is it? Maybe they do this, right? They do this quarterly like labor market outlook. This is a bit UK centric, but I know for a fact the same thing is happening in France, and I'm sure it's happening in other countries as well. So there's more industrial action in the UK than there has been since the 1980s. It is, however, considerably lower than it was in the 1970s. So it's still not high, but it's higher than it has been since the 1980s, which is interesting. Public sector pay has fallen really sharply because of the cost of living, or during the cost of living crisis, I should say, not because of. And the first time in a long time, public sector pay is actually slightly lower than private sector pay, and that's without the fact that public sector pensions are higher. So there's been some big changes.
I'll tell you what's particularly interesting here, and absolutely, Virginia, the strikes. But here's what the Resolution Foundation found out. Firstly, public sector pay has been lagging behind private sector pay over the last 10 years. And that's very, very significant. As the cost of living goes up, public sector workers, they get poorer and poorer, essentially, every year. It's effectively a pay cut every year. And so what they found out that actually strike action is coming as spiked up, but strike action correlates with increased pay. The strike action then correlates also with unionization. So basically what Resolution Foundation is saying, you know what, unionization works because it mobilizes workers to actually take strike action. Strike action works because basically it boosts your ability to negotiate better pay rates. So yeah, that's something. I mean, again, one of the key points here, we as individual consumers of services can get super annoyed at strike action. I know I do. I know it's never great to be a kind of on the end of it as a citizen, as a consumer. But on the other side, you can also see as a worker, it's absolutely right. We need to have better pay for people who've been literally left behind. And by the way, these are exactly the same types of people where 2 years or so ago, they were the essential workers that we must do better by. So let's not forget that period where, you know, we all said, you know what, these people are literally keeping the lights on. We need to actually pay them more. Well, guess what? Now's the moment. You've got to pay them more. So anyway, Resolution Foundation, definitely worth checking that out. Quarterly report on this. It's a really good read.
So Lee has said in the comments here, wasn't Brexit supposed to fix that sort of thing? Yeah. It was also supposed to stop as much immigration happening in the UK. And there's considerably more, but thank God those damn Danish data scientists are no longer coming to run our banks. And
Lee, you've just got to be patient, mate. Brexit will deliver, I think, in about 50 to 100 years, I believe. Do you know what I mean? It's a long-term play. But
when we've got the empire back, when we've got the British Empire back,
when Britannia rules the waves again, then
control
Brexit.
The Straits of Panama once more.
That's it. Send the ships to Cadiz or whatever. Craziness. Right, let's get on with this. Right, apparently you know something about career progression, Adam.
I do, and do you know something? I realized yesterday, I've never once been promoted in my life.
So you don't know anything about it?
Never once.
Okay, fine. Let's get the guests on.
However, I would like to just stress that any talent acquisition leader that wants to get promoted, or any talent acquisition person that wants to become a leader, they need to know about things that they haven't been trained much in until this point. And that is like workforce planning. What's the future going to look like? What jobs are going to need to disappear? What jobs are going to need to be created? Getting bums on seats is clearly not the most important thing for 3 years' time.
No. I'm going to suggest, by the way, folks, does anybody have a career progression tip that you can give the audience? It might be cool to just put some stuff into the thread here. Give us one career progression tip that you have used to get up in your career. Put it in the comments, in the chat. Let me know. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, put it in the comments thread there. Let's have a dialogue on this. I'll give you one. Someone told me this when I was first in as a recruiter, and it was basically this. It was like, if you're looking to get promoted to a certain level, observe the people at that level and do a little bit of what they're doing.
Walk like them.
Yeah, or just do the work that they're doing. So for instance, if they're doing things like presenting to whatever, volunteer to present something. Or if they're doing like extra report type stuff or whatnot that, you as a junior person is not involved in, get involved in doing that report generation. Have a look at the role you want to get promoted into and start like doing that activity. And then it becomes more obvious that you should be doing the activity in a more formal sense. So that's my tip.
Have you ever been promoted?
Yes.
Well, from recruitment consultant to senior recruitment consultant, right?
No, I actually broke the record for the fastest promotion from entry to consultant when I first joined my recruitment business, because basically I was just a resourcer at the time. So I shot up there, did it in about 4 months.
You went through the training program quickly?
No, basically did loads of sales. Again, as a junior recruiter, you shouldn't be doing it, but I ended up doing it. I remember I started taking client meetings while people telling me that was like not to do. But I ended up closing that deal, and they eventually said, you know what, just get this guy going. Let him get on with it. So anyway, yes, I have, but not to the level that some of our friends know and love. So and I'm going to bring on Anais because she's been waiting very patiently. And let me just, how do I grab her here? There we go. And Virginia and Joe, want to bring you on after we run through this presentation, have a quick chit chat with Anais, okay?
There's amazing comments, by the way. There's so many brilliant recommendations in the chat here.
Read a few out.
Felix says, wrap your head around data and how to use it to tell a story. Jerry says, note what your boss is reading, as well as his or her boss.
Clever, yeah.
Taz says, be vocal about your achievements and don't let others take credit for your hard work. Some really great ones in here. Rob said, dress for the job you want. So I've got a theory on that, which is you dress like a slob if you want to be in a quite junior role, right? And then you start wearing a suit and a tie if you want to progress into management. And then you dress like a slob again if you want to become leadership.
Yeah, that's it. Shirt and tie is so career wannabe, isn't it?
Mid-management.
That's it. Anyway, we've got Anais here. How are you? Great to see you.
Hello. Yeah, great to see you again. All good. It's very, very dreary here in Berlin, but
we share the same clouds.
It's Friday, so very excited.
We share the same clouds, Anais. It's miserable in the UK as well. Summer is over. Devastating. But okay, why don't you quickly introduce yourself, Anais? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally French, now living in Berlin, and did a couple of backs and forths between Luxembourg and Tel Aviv, which was my latest stint. I'm currently at HelloFresh, looking after global executive recruiting, which was incidentally also what got my career started. I helped building out the executive recruiting team back in the days at Amazon in Luxembourg, then had a little stint at Facebook for a number of years. Even, got to live the startup life for 2 years and now back into big corporate. So I think, I've touched upon so many different things, tech recruiting, high volume recruiting, business. And I think exec is where I find myself the most excited about. Yeah.
Indeed. And actually speaking to execs, that gives you a little bit of a clue as well how to get there, doesn't it? Because when you're doing the headhunting stuff, that they are at the pinnacle of where it is. So why don't, before we do a screen share and have a look at the presentation, Anais, can you tell us a little bit about this PI framework that you kind of introduced me to? What can you just give us a high level? What is this, and why do you think it's important for TA leaders to understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to take a little step back, I mean, personal branding is definitely one of my pet topics that it seems I've been talking about a lot in the last couple of months, just because I've made a lot of mistakes myself, to be honest. And I finally got that and the mistakes that I made. And I think retrospectively, I'm able to also kind of see what they were and teach those kind of pitfalls to others, right? And this PI framework is absolutely not something that I made up, right? It's been around in the talent community. I think some call it the Mondo PI because it's been picked up by someone that's been using this framework. But it is basically it was first brought to life in the 90s, so 1996, by someone named Harvey Coleman, who was kind of studying, psychology and organizations and sort of those hierarchies. And he came up with this PI framework, a PI basically standing for 3 massive ingredients that you need for personal success and career growth, which are performance, image, and exposure. And actually, I'll be happy to jump into this presentation in a second, but to really explain, those 3 ingredients, they don't necessarily come in equal parts. And there is a pitfall because these days when, you talk about this PI framework, a lot of the emphasis is put on, hey, you have to develop your branding, you have to develop your exposure, you have to be seen, be heard in order to actually get ahead. And this is true for TA. This is true for anyone in any role at this point in time. But what is most important to note is that today, this is taking a connotation of LinkedIn personal branding, right? Where are you? What are you posting about? Who are you connected in your network? And lately, I've been trying to educate a lot of TA folks on the fact that, yes, this is great, especially in TA. It's good to have a solid LinkedIn presence, or other, social networking events are really important. But we're forgetting that branding and personal, personal exposure starts at the job, right? And that you can go off. You can be on LinkedIn, you can be present in every TA event. In the end, you still have to deliver and be recognized by your peers in your first, environment, right? Your first degree connections are not the folks on your LinkedIn. They might be, that's what they're called, right? But in the end, the folks that are helping you with your promotion, the folks that are recognizing you and pushing you, right? They're your team if you're a manager, they're your peers if you're an individual contributor, and those are the connections you have to build out, and that exposure that you need to drive within the company that you're currently at, or your first kind of stakeholders, if that makes sense.
Yep. So just to restate out there, basically there's that internal image within the company. So a lot of people think branding is just externalized to, all that. Yes, you need to do this, but you know what? There's an internal branding you need to do. And I guess the bigger the company, the more important that is, isn't it? Because if you're in a 10-person organization and you're all in the same office, etc., it might become more obvious to everyone who's doing what. But as the company scales in size, suddenly you just become lost in this bureaucracy. And how do you distinguish yourself in that process? How do you navigate through? That's clear. Does everyone understand that? I hope you do. Really, really important point to make. You're going to say something, Adam, or just dumbfounded, mate? Dumbfounded? Yep, that's all good. Okay, Anais, do you want to try and share screen? I think you hover over your face and something happens there. Is that right?
Give me just a second.
Can I just add one entirely irrelevant comment? Anais is one of my favorite names because my mum used to wear perfume called Anais.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I was actually not named after the perfume. I existed pre-perfume, which is not helpful. But I was actually named after a writer called Anais Nin. So I'll let you Google it, and I'll let you think about what my mom's taste in books was.
No, that perfume is really old, is it not? That perfume's really, is it not like 50 years old or something? Or
no, 80s.
Oh, really?
Late 80s to my defense. Yeah, hang on. Let me just grab the presentation and we'll get onto it. Let me know if you've got this one.
Yep, we can share. Yep, we see it. Okay. Folks, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. All right, trying to handle multiple screens here with a tool that I am not familiar with yet. All right, and you should see my pointer as well. Wonderful. I'm using Canva. Right, so I think I would just start, and I don't want to run you through the full presentation either, because that's like a 15-20 minute thing. But to your point, Hung, about the difference that it makes whether you're in a big company or in a small company. I actually felt like for the longest time in my career, which is 8 years with companies like Amazon and Facebook, I was relying way too much on the company's brand, especially externally. I'm a recruiter. I'm an executive recruiter at Amazon. That's just prestigious in and out of itself. And I realized that this was not a huge mistake, but it was a little bit of a flag, right? Because you are more than the company that you work for. Of course, you can endorse the company that you work for, and hopefully you feel passionate about that company. But at the same time, you are a person, you are an individual, right? And, when you talk to candidates, if you're in TA especially, I think being able to also, communicate your own views and talk as an individual that didn't drink the company's Kool-Aid is super important. So I think this was one of my mistakes, mistake number one. Second mistake, what's this fallacy called again? Where you believe that
just will fallacy.
Exactly. So longest time in my career, I was under the impression that, I was just over-delivering, doing always more, while as a recruiter, pretty much being in my corner, doing my things solo, was going to get me somewhere. In the end, I was passed up on a promotion because, I don't know, Joe Blogs was a bit more vocal, had done this project that was a little bit more relevant strategically, right? So you have to realize that results are super important. We'll get to that in a second. But you sometimes have to give them a little bit of a push, right? So I hope until now, those two mistakes, people can relate to them. And then the third mistake on my end would be trusting my manager with my career development. No, I have done this talk before, and I've had people walk up to me and say, "How can you say that? I'm a great manager. I have my report's best intentions at heart," right? And I believe that. And I've been with great managers, absolutely, that have pushed me, that have helped me. But the truth is, there's always a lot of things that you have to own your own career development, right? Your manager can, in many instances, put you forward, help you with that promotion, set you up on high visibility projects. But in the end, there's also a lot that you have to carry, and that you have to drive, especially if you're in this huge team where your manager doesn't necessarily know what you've been up to or can't be the best advocate for you. And that's not necessarily that they're a bad manager. It's just the nature of the organization. So that would be kind of my 3 mistakes. And I'm just going to dive right into this pie metaphor, which
Anais, can I ask a question, please, about
the?
I've got a couple of comments to make about the mistaking your employer's brand for your brand.
Go for it.
First one is, I worked for a recruitment marketing business which nobody really would have heard of outside, unless you were in talent acquisition, basically. And then I spent 3 years at PwC. And when I first joined PwC, there was a very heavy business development emphasis on both of these jobs. When I joined PwC, I could not believe that I would get a 100% hit rate on picking up the phone and getting through to the decision maker and then getting a meeting. It was 100%. And it was the difference was startling. So the company's brand makes a very big difference to your ability to generate successes. And there's a lot of knock-on impacts of that. The other way around, I've said to quite a few people recently who have left their jobs in typically large, well-known companies to go out and work for themselves. And I've given them people at my age, the first time they're stepping out on their own, and I've just given them one note of caution, which is, a lot of your success, no matter how great you are, a lot of your success will have been, to an extent, because of the people recognize the organization you work for. Mm-hmm. So do not be surprised if the phone doesn't ring like it used to and people don't take your call and respond to your in-mail or your email or whatever the way that they used to when you had a budget and a team and power. Right? So I don't know if that backs up what you just said or contradicts what you just said, but it's certainly my experience.
I want to add one more point, because this is actually a very common controversy on sort of in community discourse. Like, is it easier to recruit for a super famous company? And you know what? Certain elements it is when it comes to making outbound and outreach, because you're going to be more likely to get an open or a reply on the basis of the fact you've got a powerful employer brand on the end of your email. Amazon.com is going to help. It's going to be better than acme.noname.it or whatever it is. So credibility. I think the point Anais is making is that sometimes you can be overly reliant on this, and you can emerge into the big wide world. One of these days, you're going to leave that type of company. You will no longer have that type of impact. Whereas someone who basically has gone up without using leveraging that type of brand may have developed different skills going forward. However, I do think you could kind of use powerful employer brand to really accelerate your network. So it's almost like if you're working for an important company that's well known right now is the time to really double down and make sure you've got a massive audience, because it's a lot easier to do it now than it is when you're working for acme.noname.com. Anyway, Anais, we interrupted, so sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the add-ons here. Definitely makes sense. So this is the famous career success pie or pie method that I was talking about. And this is where I usually engage into a little guessing game, but I guess I already kind of, spoiled this for everybody. I think it's worth noting here that this was first released 1996. So 30 years ago almost. I mean, it's crazy how basically it is still ringing true. And whenever I stream this, right, and I show this pie, there's like 10% performance. And again, I have people coming up to me saying, "What do you mean? I just need to perform 10%?" No, this is basically, this means you should be performing, delivering against your expectations. Of course, if you have the bandwidth, I mean, it's always best to go above and beyond, pick up really impactful projects and things like that. This does not by any means mean that your exposure or your image comes before your performance. Actually, the performance is what is going to set you up for success. It's going to be a vehicle to your branding, to your exposure. It's in TA, a hiring manager, usually, when you first have that first conversation with a hiring manager, you have this neutral sort of trust, right? I don't know if I want to work, if I like to work with this recruiter or not, if they're going to be good. The moment you start bringing the first, the second, the third really good candidate, you'll see that trust level go up, aka you've delivered, right? And that's what you want to build on. Yeah, but it in no way, shape, or form means that the performance just needs to be there at a 10%. So the second one would be, of course, the image, right? It's an acronym, PIE, P-I-E. Image is basically the way that you deliver, right? So all your attitude, how you work with peers, how you collaborate, this all matters, I've had plenty of situations where I've been given feedback, and of course constructive, but it still hurts when it's like, hey, remember this time when we talked about this? This wasn't cool. Like, you kind of stepped on my toes, or, you kind of went ahead without consulting me. So I think there are a lot of ways that you can be successful, but you have to be mindful of how you do it, right? So that attitude, it's what a lot of companies like Amazon call leadership principles. At HelloFresh, we've got the DNA traits, right? How it's the code of conduct between individuals in an organization. And to be honest, it's just normal human behavior, right? And I'm going to say this, I don't know if this is a sort of PG, rated or anything like that, but if you piss off people, then, that's not great image for anyone, right? If you perform, if you're this shark that goes after things and delivers great, but pisses off everyone in the process, it's obviously not going to work, right? And then moving on, the most important part, and that's the part that a lot of folks, whether it's TA leads or whether it's individual contributors have the most difficulties with, it's the exposure. If they're lucky, they have a manager or a coach or a mentor, or they're clever enough to kind of find the right forums to share their results, to really make sure that what they do kind of lands in the right ears and is seen. But more often than not, you have to go and you have to kind of work this out on your own, right? So how can you do this? There's many different ways to do this. You can find impactful projects. You can go, and connect with different people in the organization or outside, and really use this performance and this image that you've built and run it through what I call sort of the amplifier. That exposure is an amplifier that you need to kind of, set yourself up for success. So that's the idea behind the pie metaphor. And yeah, I'd say most people have it down when it comes to performance. I would assume everyone on this call, is open to learning and to understanding how you achieve things without peeing people off, right? Some people, though, that's at least my experience also as a freelance coach, is they struggle with that exposure part. How can they be set up for success, knowing what important projects they can work on, what people they need to network with, and yeah, that's really the point here, and the thing that will make personal branding or their personal brand stand out.
Yeah, Anais, I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So, is this recommending to people this is what you need to focus on in order to get ahead, or is this just mirroring this is what happens, or both of these things?
Great question. And again, lots of people came to see me after I gave this talk and told me, well, that is sad, isn't it? That I have to kind of go and I have to amplify my results to people who need to hear about it in order to get ahead. And I agree 100%. I wish, because I'm also one of these, high achievers, high performers, I want everything to be perfect. And I don't necessarily want to be spending time bragging, for lack of a better word, about my achievements to people that don't necessarily want to hear it. However, and you put the finger on it, it is pretty much what is happening in most bigger organizations, at least from what I've experienced. Especially if it comes to promotion decisions or decisions on, whether A or B person will be assigned to a specific project. If people haven't heard of you or what you've done, it is very likely, and that's just human bias, that you'll be overlooked for an opportunity, right? So it's a recommendation based on the psychological study of an organization and how it has worked in the past decades.
So does this mean that extroverts are typically going to get promoted more than introverts?
It could, I think, in many different cases be the case. Yeah.
Why do we have a scenario in sales type environments where total idiots with high performance end up getting promoted a lot, whether they're exposure or not? Like they landed 5 deals, every month last year, so we got to promote them. And they become managers. They're maybe doing both. They're maybe doing, the performance is maybe irrelevant. Actually, it's just the fact that they also have the exposure and they're doing that.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when cultures, get blinded by, I guess, that brand, that bragging, and do not necessarily look at the performance before, assessing whether or not a person is fit for a promotion or a leadership role, right? I think, but completely agree with you. It happens in many cases.
Chloe, because being a great individual contributor is definitely a relevant factor of being a good manager.
That's true, but also we have very poor way to transition someone into a different role. Like none of us have even figured out what manager is really. Is it just a reward for good performance? Usually we just give someone a reward. Is it retention sort of a technique? Or is it something else? Is it actually this person could be repurposed to optimize the performance of other people? Totally different skill set. It's almost never that. It's almost one of the other two. And actually, I think I've seen people be promoted because they were problematic individuals. In other words, they'd just cause more drama if you didn't promote them. And it was, you saw a weak manager promote them up because, I want to keep this person on side. They're just more, this, that, and the other. And it's, again, it's a very, very flawed system. But Chloe, I just want to draw attention to a comment she made. Yes, extroverts, they're louder, therefore they're more obviously seen, and therefore they get a better chance. I think it's probably true that an extrovert gets promoted more than an introvert, all things being equal, because of the visibility issue. And all of this, the reason why Just World exists is because a Just World fallacy exists, is because everyone has incomplete information over reality and we can't process it all. Therefore, we're just looking for proxies, we're looking for little signals and little nudges to say, oh, maybe this. And if your name is up there or top of mind whenever these discussions are being made, then that gets you into that situation where you've got a chance. And what we want to switch to the conversation to now is how do we get into the minds of the managers and everyone else in such a way that it's kind of ethically, values comfortable, values aligned with how we do it. So Anais, why don't you stop sharing screen? I'm going to invite on some of our other guests here as well, who have got different technique. Both of them have been business leaders themselves and also career coaches also. So I wanted to get other people's view on this, having sort of seen that presentation and see where we go from this. Let me just do a quick search for Joe Phillips. Oh, by the way, whilst I'm bringing on Joe and Virginia, why don't we take the opportunity to share LinkedIn's into the chat stream. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, share it in the comment thread and then take the opportunity to connect with everyone else who's done so. Reason why is because Brainfood Live does have to come off air in a couple of minutes. Let's not us be a bottleneck to stop the conversation. Please continue this conversation with the other people that are part of this. You can go ahead and do that by connecting with everyone else you see. So take a moment and share your LinkedIn into the chat stream and into the comment thread. Okay, we have...
Hung, how many LinkedIn connections can you accept from the crowd today?
0, I'm afraid to say. I occasionally, I'm waiting for drop off. So my chat is so bad on LinkedIn these days. I get people that just search for me and delete me.
Just go and delete people.
It's hard. You don't understand the filter. The filter is it's ethically difficult because you can't. The only things you can search on are things like location and name.
I think you were going to delete all the Collins. You were just going to do that.
All the Collins have been deleted. I'm onto the Nigels. They're almost going to go. And it's like, I'm just taking random names. It's like,
Herberts.
How bad is that? Yeah.
Definitely Herberts.
Anyway, let's say hi to our guests. So Joe Phillips, great to see you, Joe. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hello, Hung. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Joe Phillips, founder of Reading Recruiters. My expertise lies in TA resourcing and leadership development. A part of my portfolio is I work one-to-one with women to help them to get to exactly where they want to be from a promotion perspective. And I think it's interesting. I'm going to circle back in a moment to the Coleman stuff because I think it's interesting. I wonder how much of the gender imbalance gets taken into consideration with some of the research. So I'll circle back to that in a moment. But yes, hello, good to see you.
Great to see you, Joe. And absolutely, I think it would be interesting to see, what our thinking is with regards to tactics, techniques, etc. Is there gender variance on that? I've just shared Joe's LinkedIn there as well. Make sure you connect. And we've got Virginia Tirado as well. Virginia, great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi. Yes, my name is Virginia Tirado, and going back to some of the comments earlier, I have worked for a couple of those brands as well. Had the pleasure of working with Anais in our ex-lives at Amazon, and just been leading TA for Zalando over the past 3 years. So I've had a couple of those experiences that we've been talking about. Currently enjoying the weather in Mykonos, just taking a little bit of a break from this, enjoying the summer until I find my next big challenge and getting ready for that. So in the meantime, enjoying the summer.
Fantastic stuff. So if you're looking for a head of talent, a head of HR, a head of CPO, whatnot, check out Virginia. She's going to be available when she's back from her holidays. Okay, let's have a view on this performance versus profile idea. The idea that actually we need to spend more time improving our exposure internally in order for us to get promotion. What are your thoughts on that, Joe and Virginia? Let's go with you, Joe. Do you agree with that assessment? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that 10% is down to performance, but performance is a given, right? At this level, I think it's just that we spend 80 to 90% of our working day in performance. So the challenge is at what point, how do we apportion, how do we recognize when we need to prioritize this piece around image, impression management, and this perception piece? And I think it's so important to actually set the narrative. So it's really important that we set the narrative. What do we want other people to say about us when they're not in the room? And who are we reliant upon to set the narrative? And I think what's interesting is that certainly when we look at the gender differences, women are less likely to promote for themselves. They're much more likely to advocate for others than for self. We're much more likely to hear women will use pronouns such as we. So us as a team achieved. It was our activity. It was something that we formalized. They're much more likely to externalize those successes than they are to internalize them. And so as a natural reaction to that, what can happen is that women will find themselves actually not being promoted, and that their less self-promoting peers are much more likely to be promoted over them at an earlier stage. So something that from a gender split, certainly I notice, is that as women, we have to become much better at using the I pronoun, and we have to become much better at recognizing our accomplishments and being able to talk about them eloquently and comfortably.
Quick intercession there, Joe. How do you do that? And I don't want to let sort of disclose any of your coaching tips, maybe confidential or whatnot. But let's say there's someone out there, there's people out there listening to this saying, yes, I always have this problem. How do we retrain the mind so that actually you can start sort of owning your own space, if you like, and claiming some of the credit that is your due?
I think oftentimes we'll end up in our review, our annual review, and we look back and we think, actually, what have I done this year? Well, it was part of my job. Everything I've done was just my role. Everything I've done is just what I'm paid to do, rather than weekly breaking it down and actually looking at what is it that I have achieved this week? what have I achieved this week? And if you're making a note of that each week, you're going to end up with 4 achievements a month. You end up with 12 a quarter. You can do the maths. That's 26 a half year, 52 across the year. And I think it's really important that not only do we recognise what those achievements are from a mindset perspective. And to give you an example, I've got one client and she pumps through 1.3 billion in pipeline over at IBM. When I first started working with her, the conversation that we had was, but actually it's the team. It's the team does all of this. Well, yes, it is the team, but what's the strategy that you're implementing? What's the influence that you're having on the team in order for that to happen? So I think in the first instance, it's about recognizing what those accomplishments are and those achievements are. And everybody, the other end of this session will have used the STAR technique to prep candidates for interview. We've all used it. We all know it. But what we need to do is utilize the STAR technique just to get used to really exercising that muscle of self-promotion. Talk about the situation that was at hand, talk about the task, talk about the actions, talk about the results on the business.
Yeah, so very, very good. Go ahead.
It seems to be one sort of bridge between talking about we and just going full out bragging, right? One way of sort of bridging that is the concept of just like knowledge sharing. So you've achieved a success and you present it to the rest of your unit as, I want to share with everybody something that I've learned about a good, and that is presenting a success in a way that's a bit less self-serving than the person who just goes, yeah, I'm brilliant, whatever. Is that something you would recommend?
I think it's all about timing, isn't it? I think there are many opportunities where we're sat in a meeting and another has come along with a challenge and we can say, great, well, actually, if I think about this time last year, this was something that we had experienced as a team. So again, you can talk about your challenges in that way. But I also think, to come back to your point, and the word that you utilised, which was bragging, is actually it's not bragging if it's based on facts.
One thing, I think that's a very important point, Joe, and I think maybe this is also a little bit culturally as well. I think UK, generally speaking, it's perceived to be bad to be talking about achievements, perhaps different in different cultures, etc. But one of the techniques I would just like to open out, again, I'm not an expert. Like I say, I've only been promoted once in my entire life, right? So not particularly impressive at all. I'm going to go to Virginia in a second because you have had success in doing this. So we'll go that in a second. But just being a bit more transparent about your operational work, generally speaking, can just increase your visibility, good or bad. So in other words, don't wait until you've had some amazing victory, because you'll self-judge yourself to think, oh, that wasn't that amazing. It was just, whatever. But if you just habitually got into the case of, what, this has happened, I'm just going to externalize it, it will have the effect of simply increasing your visibility within the business. It doesn't have to be an enormous victory for you to talk about it. Okay, I'm going to bring in Virginia here. Virginia, I hope you can hear me. I notice you're having some hearing difficulties, but the question I've got for you, as a person that has actually gone, and it looks like you've had significant career success, achieving sort of positions of seniority and so forth. Can you describe for us sort of how you've done that? And has anything that we've talked about today, has it resonated in any way? And if so, what exactly?
Yeah, I think we learn different things throughout our career. I think initially, going back to some of the mistakes that Anais pointed out, when you are, and particularly I would say, for women, we do think that our jobs will speak for us, and we do have issues in differentiating between bragging and actually taking credit for the work we've done, and not confusing that with being with lacking humbleness, right? I think you can still be humble and take credit, wear your medals proudly for everything that you have done. But as you learn and you earn a few stripes across your professional career, it is also important to build partnerships. I think when we talk about this exposure, it's not about just getting your name out there for the heck of getting your name out of there. The one way that you will be amazing at performing is to bring others in the journey, particularly if you're in TA. If you're in TA, and your job is to sell, right? Your job is to also bring candidates in, but get that hiring manager to be accountable for reducing the attrition rate, right? Working with your business partners, working with finance so that you can figure out what is it that you need to deliver. So I think that, the more you focus on understanding how you bring value and how you are going to get things done, by bringing others through that journey, you will get a lot of what you want. And I always believe that, if you help others get what they want, you'll end up getting what you want. And that is, to me, the way that I have not only managed to build some success, but also support others, right, in getting where they need to get to. And it works. I mean, I think if you think about your stakeholders, if you are an active listener and you understand what is it that they need and how you're going to help them achieve that, you're going to have an advocate when you're not in the room for the things that you've managed to deliver. If you are not competing with your HR business partner or your finance folks or your other P&O or HR colleagues about, whose responsibility it is to get this hire made or deliver that contract, but actually working as a team, you'll get stuff done and people will remember who you are. But I think the piece where I still don't believe we take enough time is that external piece. Because if you're a good performer, you're more likely to have that internal exposure, influence, and image. But that exposure externally, making time to actually get on a live and listen about what our colleagues are doing, reposting for a friend that is actually looking for a job or sharing an opportunity or actually commenting on someone's post or just doing little things. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. Like I've now tried to make it a habit that before I start my week and I start planning, maybe in the weekends, instead of just hoping for somebody to tag me on something, I take a purposeful look at what is going on LinkedIn, what is going on Brainfood, what are we doing with great things that are happening in TA. So that's kind of my advice.
3 really important points there, Virginia. Thank you very much. I want to just restate them so I bet it in my own memory. So the first thing that was important was that relationship building is part of this process. It's not just about posting something in an internal Slack. It's like thinking, okay, who actually matters within the organization as far as my career progression is concerned? Clearly, that's your hiring manager's one. That's a given. But who else is involved in your business? That's important. Who cares about TA in there? Who cares about the work that you're doing? Make sure you do have a relationship with them where you may not operationally have one. I remember someone made a comment on the chat there about, interacting with finance, for instance, or setting up meetings with HR or whatnot. Do it off your own back. Don't wait for an excuse. Build those relationships in advance. And guess what? That's going to help you in some way. Second point you mentioned, really important, help others achieve their goals. So this is one of those where you're thinking, okay, other stakeholders in the business, if I can support them and kind of, I wouldn't say visibly, but you know what? They will know if you're doing something, you can externalize that in some way. If you have helped them succeed in some form, you're going to build some social capital. I think that's what they call it these days, whereby they're going to feel, you know what? This person has really helped me out. They're going to feel more favorably towards you as a result of that. Who wouldn't? And that's going to help you in the future when the moment comes. And the final thing that you mentioned, which I think is significant, even though I think Anais correctly distinguished the branding internal and external right at the beginning of the conversation, but I think external profile can also help the internal stuff as well. Because if you're out there and you're doing something, you appeared on this podcast or you appeared on stage at this event or something happened, there's other people in your business that will look around and think, you know what, this person's a bit of a mover and shaker or something. It's just a little bit of something, right? So maybe there's a balance there. 3 amazing points. Thank you very much for this, Virginia. Okay. Adam, you're going to say something, I think, because I'm going to go roll straight into like top tips for people that are kind of that want to get a takeaway. I hope we've already listed 5 of them, but what else do you think could we use? Joe, let's go with you on this. You mentioned gender a number of times. Let's try and drill down a little bit on this. So particularly for women, if it is the case where there is a kind of an instinct or an impulse to not grab the attention or not articulate achievement or whatnot, what is the recommended approach to train yourself out of that? I mean, have you got a technique that you could give someone to remind them? You mentioned breaking stuff down into bits over the course of the year rather than store it towards a performance review. Anything else that you can share that might be useful?
Yeah, I think it's not only keeping a record of those achievements, it's recognizing those achievements. It's putting yourself in a position where you can consider what's your exposure. So who doesn't know about you in the organization that needs to know about you, and what do you want them to know about you? So there are plenty of ERG groups. There's plenty of other ways that you can put yourself in front of the right audience. Maybe you consider other projects. Maybe you consider something that's a bit more visible in the business, but be in a position where people can see you, they get to know you, they get used to you, they can see your value proposition. And I think understanding and really being able to crystallize what your value proposition is when you're on that path of promotion is key, because that's going to be a narrative that we need to use at every occasion.
Really important a point. So almost like a personal value proposition you have to that organization. So we all know about employer value proposition. This is our proposition to people joining. But what is your personal value proposition to your organization? Have that. It's probably a good idea to have that written down, articulated, so you know what it is, and it can guide you a little bit in terms of your activity. Interesting on this, Rachel mentioned something about remote teams. How do you do this remote? Because I think as we're talking about this, we're visualizing it, and I am visualizing, yes, you're walking through an office, you're doing all this. Okay, what if you're distributed? You're not in an office. The only thing you see is Slack. How do you increase the sort of visibility totally digitally? Any thoughts? I'll open out to everyone here.
I think I'll just jump in. I think in my experience in the last 3 years, I've probably only worked in person 30% of the time. The majority of my work is remote. And actually, how do you create those? How do you create engagement? How do you create exposure? How do you create relationships? You do it in exactly the same way that you would do if you walked into an office. I don't necessarily prescribe to the whole piece about, well, I didn't get the opportunity for the water cooler chat or the cup of coffee. Well, make the opportunity. Take control of your career, figure out who you want to connect to, and connect. Be purposeful with your career.
Can I say one thing? The design of a serendipity, right? So yes, the water cooler example, making the coffee or whatnot, that was really good previous back in the day. But if we're now moving into the online world, you've got to kind of replicate similar scenarios. Can you think about how that might happen? Maybe you start something as a competition. Maybe you do something that's like outside of business as usual, but you invite other people to come and contribute to that. And guess what? There's going to be random people that you didn't anticipate that might well participate in this. And then suddenly you've got opportunity for, again, serendipity to occur.
Like chance isn't a tactic, is it? However, you can considerably increase your success when you take control of who is it I'm going to spend time with and how am I going to get in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
One thing that I find very valuable in the remote space is checking in with one another. Just at the end of the week, just randomly check in on folks that you might haven't seen and you miss. Let people know you've missed, seeing them on a Zoom call or so on. Those little things do really, really make a difference, because I think when you do things in a genuine way, they speak much more, right? But also by being purposeful, by seeking out others and just checking in, those little small gestures go a really long way. So that's another thing that I tend to do and I find helpful.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think to add to that as well, just you want to take away from being just squares on a Zoom or Google Meet call, right? You want to show that you're human as well. And that goes back even before remote time. We can always shine, we can put our best foot forward in our working relationships, which is certainly something that I've always tried to do. And it came back to bite me. I've had managers tell me, listen, people have issues building rapport with you as peers because all they see is this perfect person that's just, working super hard and you don't feel human, right? And I think, looking at it from this lens and also from the remote working lens, I was just sharing this in the chat. I was working in a full remote company for 2 years, and I realized that environment lends itself even more to just, posting in a Slack channel, hey, I closed this candidate, look at me, again, not bragging. I know it's great. And we should be, feel safe to share achievements too, to have each other, celebrate each other. But at the same time, it is so important to share failures, or let's call them F-ups, right? Because it makes you more human. And even that contributes to your personal branding. I mean, what are most people doing on LinkedIn when it comes to LinkedIn branding? They're not talking about how they smash it. They're talking about how they're, how they've been really at the low, in an all-time low, right? And what they learned from it. And I think that is also something. People follow and trust people, right? And you can't be considered a normal human being if all they see is this glamour and stardom, right? So humanizing yourself by also being very vocal about the things that are not perfect to your peers, or to whoever you feel is a good individual to make a connection with, is a good tool, in my view.
Do you know what? I think that's a perfect note to end on, because it also chimes in with perhaps the biggest point, which is this sense of, I've got nothing to share. I've got, because it's not this huge win. It's not perfect. Actually, if you just shared more or less everything, and these days there are channels where you can do this, it will mean that you will humanize who you are. People will get to know you, because if you're on a Zoom call, or you're just on, a periodic once a week type of check-in, it's hard to know exactly what's going on with this person. You've got to give other people the opportunity to know the depth of who you are, and that involves doing some of that externalization. Okay, folks, that's got to be it. We're over time. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. It feels like we've got another part 2 to do on this, because there's more practical implementation. So if you're interested in us maybe setting this up again, do let us know in the chat or the comments, and we'll get that sorted before the end of the year. But let me take the opportunity to say thanks to all of our wonderful guests. Anais Neumann, thank you so much for joining us and doing that wonderful presentation for us again. Joe Phillips, thanks for coming in short period of time, but just dropping in some truth bombs immediately, Joe. I'd love to get you back on the show. And Virginia, wonderful to see you again. Great to see some of your experiences and sharing your knowledge with us as well. Thank you all for joining us, guys.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye now.
Enjoy your weekend.
Cool. Okay, everybody, that was it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know whether you want to do a part 2. Next week, we've got another amazing show for you. We're going to be talking about generational diversity, age and ageism. Is it a thing? Is it a problem? If so, what are we doing about it? Does anybody have any strategies to hire a multi-generational workforce? We actually have people from either side. We've got people who are victims of ageism. We've got people who are going to try and solve the problem. So they're going to join us for that. Make sure you sign up to this. It's already out there. I think Steve just already shared the link in the chat stream, and also follow the channel if you like this kind of chat. Okay, that's it. Have a good weekend. See you next time. Cheers. Cool. That was very interesting, wasn't it?
It was a very good show. The guests were excellent. And the participation in the chat's really great as well.
Yeah, it's going nuts, isn't it? I mean, it literally is like OnlyFans. Not that I know anything about OnlyFans, but how it just like zips through. Twitch is probably a better example, isn't it? Yeah,
I don't know either of them.
Great. That's fine.
I'm not on either.
What are you doing this weekend, man? Anything interesting?
Watching sport, playing sport. That's it. You?
That's it.
Boxing, right?
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
First of all, do you know who it was that got it right for Usyk Dubois? I picked the round. I picked the ending. I got it right. Got the round right, even.
Did you put any money on it? That's the thing.
I did.
Did you?
Yes, I made 80. I virtually never gamble, but I put £5 on Usyk to win. I got £5.55 back. I got £5. I put £5 on it not to go the distance. I got £6 back. I put £5 on some other random one. The one which made me like 60 quid was £5 on Usyk wins in the 9th round.
Wow, that you only get what was it was a
If I put all 20, if I put all £20 on Usyk wins in the £9, sorry, Usyk wins in the 9th round, I'd have got about 280 quid back.
This is why I don't gamble. It's not enough, is it? It's like,
well, it is for a £20 stake.
Even then,
it's not going to change your life. No.
Anyway, more boxing. I think Eubank Jr. Liam Smith this week, isn't it? Is it this week?
Yeah, Saturday night, tomorrow night.
Who do you reckon?
I hope Eubank, because I'd love to see it. I hope Eubank with a close, like, points win, or only because I'd love to see a third one here. But I think the same result.
He was badly exposed last time, wasn't he?
I just don't think he's very good. I think the third. I think the same thing is going to happen. He's going to get smashed within the first 6 rounds, and that's
he's out. He was badly exposed. I think Eubank Jr. has got to win. Angela's Cripps has said tricked me. She said, "Who do you reckon?" I actually said Eubank, but I didn't quite clock it was Liam Smith he's fighting. So yeah, I think he's not going to win this.
No.
Anyway, you have a good time. I'll speak to you soon, mate. Have a good weekend.
You in a few weeks. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be dropping out for 4 weeks, which is what I want you to do. Have you bought the blue screen?
No, I haven't. But I have been. No, I haven't. But I have. But I am actually better, and also, yeah, I've got a considerable amount of. I've got a considerable amount of business administration to do. So
fine. All right.
See you in a few weeks.
Take it easy. Have I stopped recording? End the broadcast.